1, 2, check. Lisa, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay, perfect.
Perfect.
Thank you,
Great.
Lisa.
Great, thanks.
Lisa, you'll be able to share your screen. You just have a check.
Yeah, can we check? That's great.
Yeah. Yeah, perfect. I can see
It's
it.
okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And should I be off video? Will that help with the connection or does
No,
it
it should
matter?
be fine. It's up to
Okay.
you.
Okay,
Yeah?
thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think it's faster because we are late. Faster. So just been. I uploaded a presentation. No, I would. I agree with you. It's fine. Giacomo, you just navigate. I mean, what I can tell you. I don't need slides. No, just what exactly. We follow the discussion of the report. Yeah. Right now, I'm and ask, so you know about Lucia, and then people that one out of three will know Lucia. But you need to explain me that later. Yes, it's like a spot. Essentially, please flexibility now and these basic processes. I said I'm quite advised when I'm but then you'll not expect much long. Yeah, but if you say one last share, maybe. But they did the consequence in the 9%. That's the 5%. Integrated in other domestic, other. So it's a sort of I call holistic for the management framework, which you would should not make a mistake. One member or one year, take the value and rate. At the board, last country, both go to workshop. The more profit is the way they get the more you have in and then arrange. It's a survey means that we assess that he does not deliver as expected, and expected is so much, not deliver, then we will not penalize the other sector, that they determine is. It's not a bad evolution, so that is something more linked with the ground. I was waiting to start. 90%.
What can say that openly?
They at 5 before the collapse of 2018. When they signed the deal, they did it.
Need to start? Yeah. Hey. Works? Works? Hello?
Yes, are you talking? I can hear you. Now I can hear you. Okay, I heard Giacomo, and that's why I thought he was presenting. Okay, thanks.
Okay, so it works? Yeah?
Yes, yeah, perfect.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to initiate another exciting side event in the IPCC pavilion. This time, you can switch to the presentation, Jimmy. Well, to start with, I want to also show some slides that we also showed yesterday, because the task force on inventories is a little less known piece of the IPCC than the working groups. So we wanted to remind you again that we are one piece that emanated from the fact that the convention it states that the parties shall develop, periodically update and publish and make available national inventories for anthropogenic emissions and removal of all GHG, not controlled by the protocol, by the Montreal Protocol, with comparable methodologies. So that's the role of the task force, to develop those methodologies. In that regard, well, doesn't work anyway. Okay. In that regard, the objectives of the TFI are to develop and refine international agri methodologies and software, also to help countries in their exercise for the calculation and reporting of national GHG emissions and removals. Actually, what we develop is the methodologies and some tools to compile and to, but not the reporting guidance is provided by the convention. This has to be clear. We're also encouraging the widespread use of these methodologies by the countries, and also not only in the context of the signatories of the convention, but to anyone that wants to do inventories themselves. And there is a very interesting movements also, for example, that cities are also using or trying to adapt those methodologies. The work is undertaken at the request of the IPCC member governments, or also is requested by the convention itself. To emphasize, we don't measure, we don't manage, we just produce the methodologies. Okay, now, so the TFU ongoing activities are or can be summarized more or less on: we manage the emission factor database, and I will introduce the emission factor database and the status where we are briefly later, which basically is open to new data proposals and regularly revise those by the board of the emission factor database. We also do the inventory software for the IPCC. And there is a following recent update that Lisa will present at the end of this event. And also in the context of the software, there is also training activities for the use of the software for countries to increase their capacities in the use, or also to encourage them to do better inventories. Let me do something here. Yeah, okay. So What in terms of new methodologies we are doing in the 7th cycle is basically 2 methodological reports. In this event, we will address the emissions of short-lived climate forces, which is basically the atmospheric compounds that, despite of their short life compared to the long life GHG gases, have significant impact on climate change. And it's an event later in the afternoon that will deal with the other report, which is on the carbon dioxide removal technologies and carbon capture, utilization, and storage. So we start with the methodological report on the short-lived gases. What you can see here is well, the process is not just that we are starting from the approval of the outline. It was a tremendous work before, and in 2019 we already started to have a decision that the SLFCF were important. There was a technical analysis in 2020. It was a first and the second expert minute online in 2021. A third expert meeting was on the 2022, just to prepare the grounds to understand exactly what we were going to lead with or what was the subject. And there what we ended up with was a list of categories of species and also a general inventory issues related to this potential inclusion of this type of species. And that was actually inputting the outline of the methodological report. So later on, the scoping meeting was happening in Brisbane, in Australia, in 2024. And there we provide the outline that was later on proposed to the plenary of the IPCC, and it was approved in Sofia, in Bulgaria. And now from 2025 onwards, we are developing the methodological guidance. So basically here you see that all these expert meetings are being produced in reports that you can also explore in the web of the Task Force Bureau. And you have here basically the links, and it's quite interesting because then you see how the issue evolved and why we are where we are and why things are being included there. So this is, for example, in Bulgaria on the adoption of the outline. And then, well, it was decided to prepare this methodological report and to agree on the terms of reference and also to agree on the budget for the developing of the report itself. What is in the terms of reference for the report? Well, basically, what is the coverage? So we have to take into account that it aims to cover all IPCC inventory sectors. In other words, that where those gases are occurring in sectors that are already reported in the IPCC in methodological guidance 2006 or 2000 refinement for 2019, we need to screen that. And basically what we have to ensure is that we have robust methodologies that also provide by tier 1 approaches, because there are countries that may not have the capacity to develop their own emission factors. So this is a must. Then also an approach that have the relative contribution of the global regional emissions of the species. And the species that we are going to address is NOx, CO, non-methanogenic VOCs, SO2, ammonium, black carbon, and organic carbon, right? And also the primary emissions of particulate matter when they are relevant to radiative forcing and will be considered as appropriate. Eventually, the particulate matter, usually it may be part of some of the methods to estimate black carbon and organic carbon. So it's not that there's a completely new species to be considered. So there is also, it was a lot of discussions also about how to deal with hydrogen, because hydrogen is becoming a very important species. But given the uncertainties of the radiative forcing that we have for hydrogen from the scientific community, and taking note that hydrogen has not been yet well assessed by the IPCC Working Group 1, we decided that hydrogen emissions relevant for radiative forces are to be considered by authors as an appendix, meaning that we will start developing the methodologies, but they will be kept at the level that they are not recognized as full methodologies. But at least we will start working on them. So this is a table of contents for the general volume. You see that we have an introduction. We have also approaches for the data collection, so the activity data, Also, uncertainties for the estimations. We have includes also the methodological choices, explaining what are the methodological sources, including the identification of key source categories, the time series consistency, and the QEQC and verification issues, plus developing some reporting tables that obviously those are for the compilers to start doing this reporting, but the real reporting tables, if this will be part of the inventories themselves, will be developed later by the convention. Then we have actually the volumes, which are the sectoral volumes. So basically what we have is the same structure that in the inventories and the IPCC 2006 guidelines, which is the energy sector. We have the IPU sector, which is industrial processes, the AFOLU sector, agriculture, forestry and other land uses, and the waste sector. So we keep the structure of the existing guidance. And what we will do is adding the methodologies through these sectors that relate to these new species. And in that regard, for example, in the case of energy, it's been identified that the stationary combustion is one of the classes. The mobile combustion, the fugitive emissions are classes that already identify where those gases will be emitted. In the industrial processes, for example, is the mineral industry, the chemical industry, the metal industry, and the non-energy products from fuels and solvent use. That means that those are being identified already, but maybe others that will be identified in the developing of the methodologies. AFOLU sector, we have also mirrored the structure of the guidance, and in that regard, we also look for consistency in the representation of land, emissions from livestock and manure management, also emissions in the different land use categories, and managed soils are being identified also as some of the categories that are relevant. And similarly with the waste sector, where we identify solid waste disposal, biological treatments of solid waste, incineration and open burning of waste, and water waste management. But again, in all of those, we may identify that those are appearing in other categories that will be properly reflected. Having said that, the selection of authors started in August 2024. We received 412 nominations, and based on these nominations and considering the range of expertise with and without previous IPCC experience, so we are also looking for authors that may not have previous IPCC experience on developing methodologies, but they are very relevant for the knowledge we have about those species, right? And we had the first lead author meeting. It was held in Bilbao, and basically the current number of authors is 143. And well, in that regard, the developing countries authors are supported for travel and subsidies for those meetings. We are also seeing that for some areas we may have gaps. So we are starting to identify, or we identified already in the first lead authors meeting, some contributing authors that will be called upon to fill those gaps. So this is a picture of the, this is a picture of the first lead authors meeting in Bilbao. Well, there we had an introduction to the IPCC process because some authors didn't know or were not involved before. We started the elaboration of the outlines for the chapters. We discussed about the literature which is available, also assigning the work within chapters and across chapters, and identifying the gaps on chapters, authors for certain expertise. This is for the second lead author meeting, which was 7 to 9 of October in Istanbul, very recently. And there they were advancing on drafting the first order draft, which will be out soon for comments by experts. And then also they were working also on starting with the emission factors, particularly the default emission factors, and also trying to identify and address cross-cutting issues. And there we are. The next one will be in April 2026. So this is the work plan that we have. As I said, we already have the LAM 1, the LAM 2, and the third one, it will be in April in Rome. And in between, we will have the expert review between 5th of January to 27th of February from experts. Then this will be taken on board by the third lead author meeting to produce the second order draft that will be sent for comments to experts plus governments in order to produce the second order draft in the fourth lead author meeting. And the idea is to produce a draft for adoption after the comments from governments are received by 2027 and then adopting the plenary of the IPCC. So this is an advertisement. You can be a reviewer, so you can approach your contact point for IPCC in your country, and you can also provide, if you are an expert, you can provide comments to the different drafts. And as I said, the first of the draft will be out for comments from 1st of December. The registration will be 1st of December, and then it will be this period from 5th to 27th of February. So now I want to talk about another thing that we do, which is the emission factor database. The emission factor database, it was an interesting thing that indeed was started in the many years ago with the intention that actually we have the default factors into the guidance themselves, but the guidance are revised, with some periods that are not regular. So the idea was that we could have emission factors being submitted to IPCC and revised that could be used in conjunction with the guidance as well. So that, let's say that the default factors are not necessarily static, but we can add more information or more factors that can help countries to choose what are the ones that they're more appropriate for them. So here I will revise what is the origin of this exercise, that we also have the results of the management review process that is being done recently with the idea to refocus the objectives and then have building a better emission factor database and do analysis and publications as well. So in essence, emerged after the Kyoto Protocol negotiations about in 200, and the main focus was, as I said, to provide supplementary options for emission factors selections that when the IPCC emission factors were considered to be not appropriate by the countries, or they couldn't find a default factor that was fitting with their actual circumstances, which could be due to climate or soil or regulatory conditions. So basically, we undertook a process of review of the emission factor database in March 2025, and we developed new terms of reference for that. Basically, we concluded that the emission factor database, as it was conceived originally, is not working as we intended or we need at the moment. It was not bad to do it, but obviously things have to evolve. And in that regard, we are not supporting the objective of improving national inventories in a cost-effective manner if we don't evolve also the emission factor database. So the Task Force Bureau considered that in March, and we are refocusing the objectives, agreeing on new rules and procedures, and agreeing also new terms of reference for the editorial board. The emission factor database has an editorial board of experts that are the ones that review the emission factors that are submitted. So in that regard, the primary objective that we have is to develop a repository or a library of emission factor measurements. We also want to have the data that this data could be analyzed to support transparency, traceability, accuracy, and stability of the IPCC default factors. On all the data collection, we want to focus more on building partnerships with data providers, open to operational, regulatory, as well as academic data points. On data management, we want to invest a little bit more on the new database capabilities to enhance their use by countries. And the first phase of that will be completed by March 2026. And on the editorial board, which is, let's say, the experts that, sort of assess what comes, we will facilitate data collection and adoption, and the new emphasis will be on exposed analysis of the data populations rather than on ex-ante executive board controls over individual data points. So we want to go more into analytics of what comes from to produce more robust emission factors. So basically, we also want to conduct some analysis of the data collection in order to test the robustness of the existing default parameters also that are already in the guidance, but also these results should be not only done by the TSU, but also considered by the editorial board later on. And we also want to provide advice and guidance and analysis by the editorial board as to the desirability of IPCC to produce an IPCC technical bulletin on the emission factor database. Because at the moment, the only thing that we have is basically that you have an entry point, you submit, this is review, and then it appears in the repository. But the repository at the moment is very user unfriendly. You don't know how to choose things there. And this is what we want to solve now. This is an example, for example, something that can be done with this type of exercises. Here you have emission factors for stationary combustion in the existing database. So we have all these blue bars are the number of factors that we receive, right? We have several factors. So we can analyze this in conjunction, and then we can get an emission factor with a range or with an uncertainty level coming from different factors that are being submitted. But this requires an analysis that needs to be done. And so far, we didn't do that in the emission factor database. Okay, well, that's as I said, our mission is to assess the latest science and make available the science and the knowledge for the inventories. And inventories are regularly exercised, but are done by experts. But it's not something that can suffer from the latest science that can change, or you are not having enough evidence. So we have to be sure that what we produce is sufficiently sound and usable by inventory compilers. And obviously, within this new phase of the emission factor database, it provides opportunities for collaboration and partnership with data providers and for many other institutions that are providing knowledge that may be relevant for the development of emission factors. So let's say that you will have more news next year about how much we are progressing on that. And now I want to introduce my colleague, Lisa Han, that it will give you a much more interesting presentation about the evolution of the IPCC software. The IPCC software is meant to be able or to be supporting countries to actually do the calculations, apply the methodologies, and produce the reporting data. And that's extremely interesting for developing countries which are initiating this exciting venture to produce inventories, which, by the way, is exciting, but is also extremely necessary and useful. So Lisa, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Maria. Can you all hear me? Is it okay, the sound?
Yes, Lisa, we can hear you.
Okay, thanks. So yeah, thank you for the opportunity to be here. This is my favorite topic to talk about, the IPCC inventory software. And so I'm happy to provide an update on where we are. I know we don't have a lot of time, and Maria in her presentation did a really good job talking about the kind of the history of the IPCC on transparency. And what the point I wanted to make, and it's one that she made as well, is that these IPCC guidelines have been used for a wide range of activities, well beyond the initial kind of thought of national inventories. So it's very nice to see, but then the software is a component of that, and that means the software has a critical contribution to transparency and to the overall Paris Agreement. So going quickly through this, what is the IPCC inventory software? First of all, importantly, it's a free tool that's available on the website. You can see the QR code here, but it provides a tool for estimating greenhouse gas emissions and removals consistent with the 2006 IPCC guidelines, the 2013 wetland supplement, and in part the 2019 refinement, where it's needed for consistency for UNFCCC reporting. You can download it on the website. Key point is that it is designed for Windows operating system, so it doesn't. It's not designed for Mac. People have tried to use it with emulators, but just a note that it is designed for the Windows operating system. There are many benefits to use of the software, and as you'll see, I think countries are really starting to realize it. first and foremost, it has evolved so much in the past decade, and now it does cover all IPCC methods and approaches from the 2006 guidelines, the supplement, and then the 2019 refinement. It will calculate the key category analysis in accordance with the IPCC category tree, your reference approach, uncertainty analysis. The latest version of the software has a tool in it to help with your F-gases to see as a QA/QC check. Basically, it has calculation worksheets for every category. And so you can input the data. All of the IPCC defaults are available in dropdowns. Maria was talking about the emission factor database. And so any of the defaults from the IPCC that are in that database are also in the software, accessible from the dropdown menus. There are different tools to help with data entry, to manage your activity data in the country. It will enable you to have an inventory ready for Paris Agreement reporting, and I'll talk about that in a second. But really, it becomes a component of a national system. It's fully adaptable to national circumstances. You can estimate emissions at the national level for each category. You can also estimate it at a subnational level, a city, a plant. You can use it to track mitigation actions. So the opportunities are tremendous. You can have multiple experts working on the software simultaneously. So depending on how a system is developed, it's usable for you. And at the end of the day, you have all of the data in one place. So it serves as an archive, which helps you then build your next inventory. And as we all know, an inventory is a multi-year continuous improvement cycle. So the past couple of years, we have talked at these COPs a lot about interoperability. It's a huge benefit of the software. The idea being that you can insert the data and estimate your inventory in the IPCC software. So you either have your national data, or where you're using tier 1, maybe you're using international data sets. You calculate emissions for each category. And then in the IPCC software, you will generate a file. And this file will contain all of the information that you need for reporting to the UNFCCC. You then take that into the UN tool, upload it, and you have what you can see here is it will automatically populate the common reporting tables. And this solves so many issues. You have 60 tables per year. You can have up to 30 years in a time series, and you can imagine the benefit of that data being automatically populated into the CRT. You will be in good company, users of the software. This has been something that's been really fun to watch over the past year. Looking at the BTR submissions that have come in to date, the vast majority of developing countries that have submitted a BTR have done so using the IPCC software in some capacity. They may not use it for all sectors. I think most do, but in some cases, they might use it for one sector, or they might use it as a QA/QC functionality. But what we're finding is that over 70% of developing countries that have submitted a BTR have used the IPCC software. And you can see here the regional breakdown of that. Also, with looking at the LDCs and SIDS, over 84% of those that have submitted a BTR have used the software. So countries are seeing the value of that, and this continues a long legacy. This was also the case with the BURs as well. I think about 98 countries have used the software at some point for the BUR process, or national communications. So it is an evolving process. If you looked at the software 12 years ago, you would see that it was using the tier 1 methods, but today covers all methods. So we're always looking to improve based on user feedback. So if you have a chance and you have any concerns, questions, comments, feedback, please provide them. Maria had the address as well. Changes that we make are made to ensure alignment with the IPCC guidelines, responding to user needs, and always now ensuring that we continue to maintain interoperability with the UNFCCC reporting tool to help you with your Paris Agreement reporting. Some of the short-term improvements that are coming down the line, a big one, and it was based on some feedback we've received a couple of times, is to clarify the methods and improve the methods for estimating emissions from open burning on solid waste disposal sites. There was a lot of questions about, well, how do you do this? Does it go in solid waste? Does it go in open burning? The 2019 refinement has more information on this, and we've coded that now into the software. A big one is the capture of biomass CO2 should be reflected in national totals. This goes back to the 2006 IPCC guidelines, where you could end up with negative emissions because of this capture of biogenic CO2. This will be an upcoming version. We have some flexibilities that have been introduced on the reference approach, so you can better reflect country-specific circumstances. IPPU, we have improvements in windows, soundproof glazing of windows to better reflect country-specific circumstances. In the medium term, we've been doing a lot of fixes and changes and improvements on LULUCF. The incorporation of IPCC equations 220, 221, and 222. This was just identified and it will be fixed. There are equations for the transfer of carbon from the biomass to the dead organic matter pool. This will be addressed to ensure that we have all equations covered. Allowing multiple disturbances, for example, fires that can happen on a single unit of land in the same year, that will be fixed and allowed. And then more refinements to allow country-specific circumstances. So if you see any issues, please feel free to reach out to the IPCC TFI, and we log all of these and make them going forward. Looking a little bit more into the future, a big one, there's some changes that we already have in the pipeline. We're working on the initial specifications, but looking at the calculation of the uncertainty analysis. Right now, many countries do use the uncertainty analysis, but the IPCC defaults are not fully populated for this component, and so that's something that we want to look at. We also want to enable the uncertainty to be calculated at multiple levels. For example, activity data, emission factor, category, sector, total. So that is a big area of work. More on, we want more functionalities on supporting QA/QC. For example, to be able to do and show recalculations and improve time series consistency. On recalculations, you could do that now, but you would have to have two separate databases, and then you compare the results of the databases. Time series consistency, it would be great to be able to print out reports that have the time series in it a little easier than what can be done now, so that you can QA/QC. We're looking to develop an add-on to support the upload of the land representation data. Land representation is a challenging part of any inventory, regardless of what tool you're using. And so we want to make it a little bit easier for everybody. And then finally, we're investigating architectural improvements to enhance performance and better support all users. So these are things like, helping Mac users make the software accessible to all. More on like the graphical functions, things like that could help you every day as an inventory compiler improve your inventory. So I went very fast, but some key takeaways is that the IPCC inventory software is the preeminent tool for calculating an inventory consistent with the guidelines. You can be confident when you use this tool that your calculations are correct and that you're reporting in a manner that's consistent with the MPGs. I think also this helps kind of take away some of the time that you would spend on calculating, and as a country, focusing on the data collection, which can be a key challenge for all countries. So it frees up your resources. You can work with it in your team as you see fit. And importantly, as we start going from a world of inventories to using those inventories to track progress towards an NDC, it's a tool that can help in this effort as well. So my final comment would be that please take a look at the website, look at the materials that are available. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. The email is there as well. Happy to help in any way we can. I think this is a great tool, and I think it's making a big difference in the overall quality of inventories. So that was very quick. I think we can, if there's time for any questions, I'm happy to respond. Back over to you, Maria. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lisa. Because Lisa, because Lisa has to leave, I think we can take the software questions first. So is there any question on the software?
No. Now it's working. Thank you. Thank you for the comprehensive presentation on the software. We personally, as Saudi Arabia, really from the software regarding into preparation for our VURs and BTR. We have a technical question regarding the software itself. Is there any plan of implementing APIs or introducing APIs to the software so we can use some of the functions in the software in our national systems? Thank you.
So Lisa, it seems that they want to
Yeah.
know if they could take parts of the software to be inserted into their national systems that are evolving.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would suggest that you reach out to the IPCC TFI specifically on this. I can also check as well. I mean, these are the kind of things when we talk about architectural improvements that we do hope to enable, because this connection with national data systems is a question that we often get. And the capacity with the current software is only so much. I mean, it was originated in 2012 and has been built on since then. But this is something obviously that the direction where everything is going. So I think your comment is very valid.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the first initiative was actually to produce something that where you can compile for the whole inventory. And this is very useful for countries that are starting. But as soon as countries are evolving, probably this is the direction that we have to take. So it's extremely important that you give feedback to us.
Yeah.
You know, and anything that you think it may be useful in the future, please do so.
Yeah, now's the time.
Thank you very much. Just a quick question. Can you remind us, please, how many of you are working on this? Because it seems huge to maintain the software and stuff.
Well, we are not many. The fundamental piece is Lisa, and the TSU is working with her also. I mean, this has been developed on the basis of many years of experience of building inventories. But now what we need is not only Lisa and the team in the TSU, is always to test the software with you. So it's extremely important that you use the software and provide feedback to us.
Hi, Maria. It's good to see you and good to see everyone here. Firstly, I have a question on the software. So we've personally used it for the BTR, and we have a question about the interoperability with the UNFCCC website, because we've been using it and we've faced so many issues with interoperability where we would get errors and we have to manually input certain data. So has there been any updates with regards to the interoperability?
So Lisa, you have
I can hear
more information than me.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, on the interoperability, we continue to work closely with the UNFCCC on this. I mean, I have been testing this thing a million times over the past 3 years. I know of maybe 2 or 3 places specifically where there's where a value doesn't transfer, and they're highlighted in the user guidebooks. So it would be good, actually critical, if you can provide feedback on something that you think is a problem. I know that 4-H is a problem on aquaculture, and one thing on harvested wood products, but otherwise, I don't know of any issues with the transfer of data. So yeah, please reach out. We continue to work closely with the UNFCCC and FCCC on all of the releases that we test interoperability on both sides. And yeah, so please let us know if you see something, because that would be very helpful.
I have a second question, but on the report itself. Okay. So I know you have a few drafts already, and I was wondering what is the status with regards to the hydrogen, and if there's any updates with regard to it, and if the literature is at a level where you can develop a global default emission factors.
Well, the authors have been working on that. I think you will see that in the first order draft. So please have a very close look to the hydrogen. There are areas where we need really, comments from the experts for the first order draft. For example, also particles is an area where, BC and OC and particles, hydrogen. So that are areas which are pretty new, because for other substances we have more knowledge from the Air Pollution Long Range Transport Convention, but for those we don't have. So, I mean, we are being capturing as much literature as we can, but maybe we are missing some things. So please, I think it's a good question. Focus on that, because between the first order draft and the second order draft is when we will do a massive effort to really polish the methodologies and see how far we can go. In any case, the hydrogen will be in an appendix, right? But of course, the appendix can be more or less elaborated. The status is one thing, but how far you elaborate is another thing. So any other question? I told you that the software was the best part of the session. So I think we don't see any, yeah, this
Yes, just two quick questions. One is, when will the emission factors from 2006 be updated and brought into the next IPCC report? And secondly, you mentioned that methane is already handled by the IPCC guidelines, but you also mentioned that there's a lot of overlap coming with the other short-lived pollutants. And I wondered if you could say something about how you will handle methane leakage, for example, from biomethane plants, how you will handle the growing move to try and change the metrics for methane to GWP star, which I think is a misrepresentation of the science.
Well, I mean, first of all, that the emission factors are being sort of updated in the 2019 refinement. So although it's the 2006 guidelines, what is mandatory for countries to apply for the GHG inventories under the Paris Agreement, you can use the refinement also to look for emission factors that are being upgraded there, right? So there has been some changes in methane there as well. So I encourage you to look that. But actually, we are very careful on identifying where methane leakages are and so on, and to separate the species from the Montreal Protocol. The Montreal Protocol species were covered in the guidance. What we are covering now is what not being included in the Montreal Protocol. And now we have the challenge to actually make all this easy and consistent enough that countries do not have an extra burden actually to get this data. So I don't see any more questions. Sorry that we were very fast because we started very late. But if you have any other further question, please approach us and we will be very happy. Inventories are an iterative process. And, it's also very interesting that with the review process under the Paris Agreement, there is also a large opportunities for capacity buildings in countries. The reviews are excellent ways to identify how methodologies are being applied. And if you have any issue related to that, come back to us, but also pay attention to the review process under the convention, because this is a great effort to actually make also capacities in the countries.